Real Cuff Radio is about to begin.
Everybody loves a hero. I believe there's a hero in all of us.
Well, welcome to Real Cuff Radio, where co-host Todd Black and I have Captain Ronald Johnson on the line. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming on to talk about your memoir, which is called 13 Days in Ferguson. That had quite an experience.
It really was, and I tell everybody it was life-changing.
Yeah, I can't, when I was reading your memoir and I was sitting here thinking to myself, that was like being thrown right into the lion's den. Anybody could have ate you alive. The people who were writing, the media, the other officers, it was like, no, I don't even know. What did you think when they turned around and said, hey, you're going to be captain today?
Initially my emotions were all over the place, and I asked, of course, quickly to myself, why me? Why am I being put in this spot? But immediately, it became just a walk of faith. And I just said, you know what, I'm here, and there has to be a reason. And sometimes you don't have to ask why. You just have to walk with it.
One of the things my husband and I were, when we were discussing about interviewing you tonight, was I mentioned to him that Martin Luther King Jr. would have been very proud of how you handled the whole situation with not a violent approach at all, which was exactly complete opposite of what was going on. I was just going to say, I remember this was 4 years ago, and when I saw it come across the news, I thought, holy moly, I can't believe it. We've gone back in time? I mean, are we not progressing forward? But it seemed like just such I was just in shock. I was in shock. I couldn't believe that we were having something like this going on in America today. But that was my thought.
And that's what I tell people. For me, it took me back to that moment also, where I started seeing canines on our streets and started seeing the same kind of interaction. And I just said, we're not going to go through that today. We're not going to go back to that point. And whatever I could do, whatever we could do as a police department community, we need not go back there.
Yeah, I was seeing in the perspective, too, that anytime you have a fire and throw fire on top of a fire, it's just going to be a bigger blaze. So your approach was almost like, in a sense, a fresh drink of water. And did you notice when you first started walking, it seemed like you were saying you were walking morning and night, but did you see like maybe bug eyes? They just couldn't believe their eyes, what they were seeing when you were doing this approach, instead of being, not bringing out riot gear and here you are with no vest on and just your police uniform and trying to talk. Did you kind of see that the people, were they in shock? They just didn't expect this at all?
Well, they really were. When I walked down the street that first day, people started to come out of this crowd and started to hug me. And people that I'd never met. And people said, you're out here, you're seeing our face. You want to hear what we have to say. And so it kind of took off from there. And that's really not what I thought was going to happen. And I could tell people all the time, I walked down that street initially from a policeman's perspective to see what our surroundings were. And that first day that I walked there, I really didn't get a chance to see our surroundings because people were coming out and embracing the walk. And initially when I got to this group of ladies, I said, can we pray for you? And then right there from that moment, I knew that I was doing the right thing and I needed to continue just to walk that path each and every day.
I appreciated how you wrote in your book, item by item, detail by detail, the officers not understanding what you were hearing on the street, just all the details. Well written. What are you going around telling people now that you learned from this situation? Are you seeing that this made a difference maybe with the blue and people who are frustrated, or just the racial tension maybe between the officers out there on the streets and just misunderstandings?
I tell people when we can talk, we find out that we have more in common than we have apart. And that the same things that we all want out of life and for our families, for our kids, and for each other, they're the same. And we just have to talk through those. And I think that's what happened when I began to walk down the streets and put the officers on the streets. They began to have conversations that they hadn't had before with people from different races and socioeconomic backgrounds. and educational platforms. And so people start seeing how much they were alike, and people began to say, it's not that I don't like the police, but we have to respect each other. And I'm going through a lot of different struggles in my life. And so I think it did change lives on both sides of the issue.
Are they duplicating this other states or in different places in Missouri now?
Well, we know we've got more community events. Law enforcement is starting more programs, but communities are communicating with each other better. So I think we're seeing that, and we're seeing across our country when we have other issues, you begin to see the police go out into the crowds and walk out in the streets and talk. And so from that standpoint, I think we're moving forward, and I think they saw law enforcement saw some positive gains by getting out and talking. You know, many people would say, you know what, no one's ever really saw who I was. They walked past my face and never hear my voice. And so when I speak across the country, I tell people a lot of times what you're hearing from me are the words of the people that sometimes we all pass by.
You know, I just want them to understand here, all of a sudden you're thrown into this position. You know, everything else, the white police officers got angry and felt like you were a traitor to them. And it just opened up a can of worms, basically.
And that is true. But I also tell people that moment when I walked down the street at Ferguson that first day, and this group of ladies came out and prayed for me. No one threw a rock at me. The name calling stopped. And so there was my sense of protection was there. And from that point, I really had no fear because I knew that my faith and my God was protecting me. And, you know, my wife didn't like me not wearing my vest, but I told her I didn't have this fear, and it wasn't an arrogant. There was something about that moment that just told me just to walk in faith, and that was his plan for me, was a walk.
And that was totally it, walking in faith. I mean, you had to do that.
Yes. You know, people would say, what's your plan for tomorrow? I said, I'll have to wait till tomorrow. And I knew God would give me that answer and that plan. And so then we talk about what we were going to do that next day.
What about, let's talk about racism and stuff. What can we do, communities all over the United States, to try to start changing this? Because, you know, my wife mentioned earlier about Martin Luther King Jr. Well, in his speech, I Had a Dream, you know, he talks about the whites and the blacks holding hands, and you know, he talks about it as coming together. Truthfully, I think it's about time that we do. I think it's about time we fulfill his speech.
I agree, and I think we have to have honest conversations. We have to have different conversations. You know, and sometimes we have these group meetings, and I say sometimes it's to be talking to the choir. We have to go out into our communities and talk to those people that may not come to the neighborhood meetings, eat at some of those restaurants that we normally may not eat at, and just start having these honest conversations. And, you know, a lot of people talk about being colorblind. And I said, I don't want anybody to be colorblind. We're colorblind to each other. We don't see the value that each of us have. And so I think we just have to be honest, and we have some differences, but we're alike in so many ways. And I think we saw the end of those initial protests in Ferguson come about because people started to talk and started showing respect to each other.
You know, my dad was born and raised in Mexico. I was raised with 80 to, you know, plus in a Hispanic community. You know, I look like a gringo, and my last name's Black, so I was called Negro my whole life, basically, growing up. But right. I don't think I ever felt the racism that I feel now, you know, even in that situation. I don't think that, you know, I mean, it seems like we have taken a turn for the worse, and I would love to see us start to go back the other way and be able to embrace each other and not have this stigma. You know, for instance, you know, Black Lives Matter. Well, all lives matter. I think we need to get to that point. I mean, including the unborn lives. They matter too.
Yes, and I agree with you. We're in some of the most challenging times of my lifetime, and that I could never imagine. And my hope is that we're going to have some greater conversations, and that we can move forward, and that one day that the kids that are brought into this world can have peace, the peace that we all seek. And I think our faith plays such a role in that, and we have to believe in that and keep walking, and knowing if we keep walking on that path, it'll be okay, and we'll get there.
You know, like you were saying, talking to people, everybody thinks they have some kind of an answer and stuff, and this morning I was talking to a group of people, and someone brought up, they said, Well, the problem is we don't have the fathers at home, and we don't now. As far as I know, Michael Brown's father was there protesting, so I assume that he was probably the father at home. I don't know that for sure, but yes, I do agree with that. It would be nice that more fathers were, not just having kids and taking off, but I don't think that's the complete answer.
But I also think that as fathers, and in a lot of our urban communities, there is a single parent and mothers are the head of those households. But I also talk about as fathers and men, we can do more. And sometimes we may have to be a father to someone else's son. And I know just recently I'm trying to get involved to be a big brother in the Big Brothers and Sisters program. And so that's something that Ferguson has created in me, that my son is older and away from home. And so sometimes we have to give more of ourselves, and it's just not about our home and where we are, and we can help each other out and be those mentors, whether men and women, be mentors to those that we can train and help.
Go ahead, Julie.
I was just going to ask, is Ferguson way better off now? Have you seen a lot of progress since this and rebuilding just different mindsets?
I think Ferguson is moving forward, but I call it inch by inch. Ferguson kind of had two platforms. It had one part of his community that was doing really well and another part that was struggling. The part that's struggling is still kind of struggling. There are a lot of plans that are on the table. They just announced they're building a new boys club there, with the girls club. The Urban League built an Urban League center there. So people are trying, but it took a long time to get there, and it's going to take a while to get where we need to be. But they're moving forward inch by inch. But there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of fences to be mended, a lot of relationships to be established throughout our whole community.
Well, it's only been, a little over 4 years now. So, unfortunately, anytime a riot or something like that happens, it really hurts the community, especially when you catch stuff on fire and tear down buildings and makes businesses not want to come back.
That is true. And then when it happened all over our country, Ferguson brought people from all over the globe to Ferguson. And I think when we have these incidents across our country, it affects communities throughout our nation. And we have to find that answer all over our country. And I think the answer is going to be the same. Communicate. We have to, of course, create jobs, have better educational systems. So there's a lot that has to come together to get there and have those conversations.
Now, what about some of the police officers that were white? They kind of initially were very angry at you. Have they come back and apologized or got your friendships back?
I think some of them have and some haven't. But it's the same thing on the protest side. Some protesters have and some haven't. But, one thing that I said doing Ferguson, when I would go and pray at the command center or go pray in my private time at home, I told God I'll take whatever criticism that I have to take. But I just wanted to make sure that no one else lost their life in this incident. So if you allow that to happen under my watch, whatever criticism I took or get, that I was willing to accept it. Of course, you lose some friends, but I've made a lot of friends and relationships that I would have never had that I value greatly.
That's good. That's amazing. I was just going to say that I hear that, talk's coming to the table, but my prayer would be more action and less talking. Get the job done, make progress, or at least, come to a plan and keep going forward with it instead of just talking. Any other questions you have, Todd?
Well, we had talked earlier about asking him, where do you want to see this book go? And, where are you going in the future, basically?
Well, actually, I am retiring November 1st after 31 years as a state trooper. And I joined a team called Lodestone, LODESTONESG. It's a consulting leadership training company. And we want to go out and consult and talk about leadership and how we all can be leaders and talk to corporate America, how they can be better leaders and lead their workforce, and consult communities and on how to outreach and work together and engage each other. And then law enforcement, how they can be better in having this conversation and understanding. So, our hope is to go across this country and create that kind of platform and that kind of change, do some motivational speaking, and just talk about how do we lead when everybody's watching. And I think we lead from that. We talk about leading from that moral compass and our faith that has to guide us in everything that we do.
I definitely, hear in what you wrote in your book and what you're saying that this definitely strengthened your relationship with God during this whole ordeal.
It truly has. And I told people that other times in my life I've questioned God and why me, why this. But in this case, I needed not question him. It was like, if this is the task that you've given me, I know you're going to make me strong enough. And even though some of those prayers were filled with tears and pain, I knew I just kept walking every day that I needed to walk. And when I walked down that street, when I'd get on that street, I was walking with him. Okay, here we go. I know you've got me. And I tell you, I felt that greater peace walking down those streets. And so hopefully this book will be something that can create some change. In the book, I try to show who I am as a person, and not this perfect, not this guy with all his answers. And so when I speak, I tell people, you may see me as a traitor, you may see it as a coward, or you may see me as courageous. And doing Ferguson, I can understand all those vantage points, and I don't try to change people's mind. I just want to tell you about my walk.
By the way, congratulations on 31 years and soon retired. But
thank you.
What's the website that people can look it up?
Yes, it's www.lodestone, LODESTONESG.com.
All right. And do you already have speakers? It's already going. You're going to be included in it, or are you starting this?
Yes, it's up and running. Yes. So we've got a great team. They can go to the website and find the team, and please contact us.
All right. That would be great. We'll connect that to it. Well, I just want to tell you thank you so much for coming on and for writing this book. I enjoyed it, and I'm just grateful to see that, it turned out, we can just say it was a miracle that dissolved in 13 days.
Yes. Yes, it truly was.
Well, blessings to you on your new adventure, and sounds like you're putting action to your words, too. So
I'm just like you. When you said it's about action and not about words, and that was right up my alley. And so now I agree with you. We have to have action, and that's how we make a change.
All right, Captain. Well, many blessings to you.
Well, thank you and Todd, and blessings to you. And if you ever need anything, please call.
That's great. Well, that's a wrap.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream.
Yeah.
It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
Hey, this is Real Cuff, and I want to thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. YouTube completely removed our channel for a couple of years, but now we're back. Thank you.